Hi, good afternoon. I'm Gigi Weiss. I'm the Director of Rehab at RVNA Health. I am a physical therapist and been at RVNA Health for almost 15 years. Yes, and we were standing in the back of the room and while you guys were having this conversation and this great kits that you have, and I think after our presentation, you'll have a little bit more insights of which this should entail. So we're kind of excited about it, but I'll.
Absolutely.
Yep.
My name is Danielle Talibi. By trade, I'm an occupational therapist, so this for me is like really, really exciting because occupational therapists work a lot on creating kits like this, really specific to the people that we work with. So this is a great idea, and I think it's going to be awesome. And after our presentation, you will probably have more ideas about what could be included and how to grade the exercises or the activities to the person that you're trying to get engaged.
And before we go any further, we're RVNA Health. Have you guys know who we are and what we do and the services that we have? I see some head shaking. So we always like to kind of introduce really who the heck are we? So RVNA Health is a home health agency. We've been around since 1914. So we're going to be celebrating our 110th anniversary. We started as a home health agency. Over the years, we've grown into, we have a full outpatient rehab center. We have a palliative care. We have StayingWell, which is our private pay entity for caregivers and private pay. And then we also have, we've just, in the last couple of years, launched a hospice program. We also have community health and wellness. I'm sure, you guys maybe have gotten your COVID shots through us over the last few years. So we have a full, robust continuum of care. So, and one of our passions is dementia. We also have we just launched the Parkinson's Center program. So we've got a lot of continuum, and we just, if you have any questions about what we can do to help you guys, we're here. We're here for that. We service over 38 communities in the surrounding area.
So I just wanted to ask, can a couple people just raise their hand and give me an idea of what you hope to learn out of this, or what you came here to learn or hope to learn out of this?
I'd like to learn some of the signs of early dementia.
Okay, perfect.
Support for the family and guidance on how to get the diagnosis. It's very obvious in my case, but we're fighting against a very smart person who's able to outmaneuver.
Yep. I know the type, it's great.
How do you recognize dementia is coming?
Okay, perfect. So we pretty much touch on all of those. Yep.
I guess in my case, it seemed like it was an Alzheimer's. It sounds really unexpected, but diagnosis, but there is dementia as well.
So the confusion between dementia, different types of things that cause dementia, we'll talk about that as well.
But to clarify, maybe
Sure.
someone in the audience, it seems as though the dementia could actually overshadow Alzheimer's. Was the last doctor appointment I had, and I don't really even know what that means.
I'm going to clear up that difference, because a lot of people don't understand that dementia is actually just a cluster of symptoms. It's not a diagnosis.
Right. Danielle and I are certified dementia practitioners, which is a national organization. And one of our initiatives of RVNA Health is that all of our clinicians become certified dementia practitioners. And we are a certified dementia practitioner trainer. So we're like train the trainer. So we took even in a more extensive class and course and certification. So that's kind of where we are and how we got here today. So let's see here. So this is a little bit about some of your questions here. Dementia. It really is not, when you use the term dementia, it's not a specific disease. It's rather a general term, and it's kind of a cluster of symptoms that can cause dementia. I think the big distinction is that Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. It's the most common form. So people say when I have Alzheimer's or I have dementia, they think it's one and the same. It's actually not. Alzheimer's is a distinction of dementia. And these are just some of the different types. So there's the Alzheimer's disease, there's vascular dementia, which is really kind of the brain and the circulation, so, which I just lost there, vascular direction. So that's, and there's Lewy bodies, which is also a neurological, it's a very fast acting dementia, and then the frontal lobe dementia. So these are just some different types, but I think the real distinction is just to know that Alzheimer's is really the most common form of dementia, and the others are and dementias in different categories.
Does that clear up your question a little bit? So the term dementia just means that somebody is displaying symptoms such as memory loss, there's some physical changes that happen, agitation. There's certain symptoms in the early stages which are recognized to be, this person might have dementia, umbrella term. What type of dementia would have to be diagnosed, but actually with what Gigi will tell you is that Alzheimer's is not diagnosable except on autopsy.
Yeah,
So,
true Alzheimer's, they think you may have it, but they actually can make the diagnosis. They have to do autopsy, and we'll show you the distinction of that.
but we know enough about how it presents, so a doctor can say, this is correct. It's how it manifests in behavior.
Correct.
Yep.
So these are the general stages of dementia. And again, the first stage really can happen early on. There's really no significant cognitive decline. So it's really early on. Then you kind of progress through stage 2 is where you kind of get those mild cognitive declines. And I think people get worried because you have to differentiate normal course of aging and true dementia, right? So we all have that experience where we walk into a room and we're like, what the heck was I coming in this room for, right? Like that's just normal course. You have to like reset yourself. You go, oh yeah. So when you have those things, don't get worried. I mean, that's just normal aging, kind of forgetting little things, but it's really when it starts to really impact your life is where it starts, then you have to have a little bit more looking into it. So don't be worried about that.
Stop there.
Right.
So if it's normal progression of aging and you have a mild cognitive, decline happening, it does not mean that you're necessarily going to go on to have full-blown dementia.
Yeah. So, and again, this is also memory. Also, as you go further in the stages, then you have the motor losses and all that kind of goes along with it. So that's where it. So it's just kind of goes from mild, very mild, moderate, severe, and then the final stages are 6 and 7, which is like what's the goal and what's the next stage after that. So it's really important when you guys were talking about making your kits, and I think someone had that great question. Do you make your kits to match your stages of dementia? And the answer is yes. I think
In an ideal world.
in an ideal world.
But what you could do is choose things that can be graded or used differently. So if somebody was a golf player and you include a golf ball in the kit, for example, you can do a million things with that golf ball, right? You could set up a cup on the table and have somebody roll it into a cup. If they're more progressed, it might just be the sensory of holding a golf ball. So there are different things that might work at different levels just because of what they are. So choosing some of those things, if you're going to have one type of kit, might work.
Right. So you really need that meaningful activity to that particular person.
All dementia is progressive. So if you have like Alzheimer's, if you have a true dementia, it is going to progress, but that's different from having cognitive decline. So cognitive decline, I'm already having it, right? It's as we get older, there's certain things like I don't remember names as well. So hopefully mine would just be that and stop there. 50% would go on to maybe develop into a more severe form of dementia.
And these are just some statistics that we have, that more than 6.7 million Americans 65 or older are currently affected with Alzheimer's disease. And then kind of doing the breakdown. Of course, I need my glasses here because I have to see. So of those, the number of people 65 and older, there's 6.7 million. Of that, people from 65 to 74, almost 8 million. These are people with Alzheimer's. And then of that, so at 75 to 84 years, 2.5 million, and 85 plus 3.1 or 2.3 million. So as you get older, the progression is the occurrence of Alzheimer's dementia kind of increases a little bit. What's important to know is that you're not alone, right? Dementia cannot just be given by statistics. There's definitely, as you could see, a lot more funding that's being brought into research and help for treatment and prevention of dementia, and there's a lot of these grants, and because, you know, as our population is aging, we know that the instance of ongoing dementia is going to get higher. So, so there's a lot out there for all of us with.
A big part of what Gigi was saying was there's a correlation between people living longer, right, and the incidences going up. So a lot of people think, well, this is very depressing, you know, this topic of dementia, but there's a part of it that's, you kind of have to weigh, it means we're living longer. So some people see that as a positive, right? But we are going to get more illness, and this is one of them. This is just one of them.
So good, person-centered care. So it's a little bit of what you guys were, you know, with the dementia kits, but you want to make sure that you're including conversations when speaking to the family members. You want to include the patient or the person in your conversations. You don't want to talk to your mom in front of your mom to somebody else. Like, you really want to make sure that you're including them. So what we're going to go through now is really some strategies and all that when you're working with people with dementia. So this is a person-centered care. You want to make sure that you're really including that person. You have to remember that they are a person, they're not a characteristic. So when we say that, you don't want to say, oh, my mom, you know, she's a feeder, right? Like, all she does is eat, right? You want to when you're talking about people, you want to make sure that you're talking about that person, and not kind of like define them by their dementia, right? Define them by dementia. You don't want to use demeaning phrases around them. You want to make sure that, you know, obviously we want to assist them in their dignity, and make sure that that people are aware of some of their deficits that they have. You want to make sure that when we're talking with people that have dementia, especially even the later stages, that we don't talk to them like children, right? We don't want to talk down to them, and remember that, you know, that they hear you. They might not understand, or they might not be able to communicate out to you, but we want to make sure that we're not talking to them like they're children.
And we all have made that mistake. I just want to, like, it's an odd thing when you're talking to somebody and you're not sure what their comprehension is. And oftentimes we do go into a different vocal voice. So don't beat yourself up if you've done it. We're just trying to bring awareness to it, because I think you'll get a better response from that person if they feel that you're talking at the level that they feel they're still at.
Right. So some of these strategies, these are as caregivers, care partners to people with dementia. So so that we can get the most response, better response. This drives us, you know, kind of nuts in the healthcare world when people call adult, the briefs, you know, just, you know, call them adult diapers, like that. We just don't want to use those kind of terms. So we could, you know, still refer to them as, you know, adult briefs or underwear. Like, don't, you know, try to avoid those kind of terms. Avoid saying terms like bib, right? That's another kind of. But we want to protect, you know, even I, when I eat lobster, right, I put something on. So we want to be able to protect their clothing, but try not to. Use those terms. Again, kind of how to talk to someone with dementia. Remember that one day they may seem to understand something, right, and know you and understand things around them, and the next day they don't. So, and that's really hard, right? One day your mom knows who you are, and the next day they don't. They will have moments. People will have moments of clarity. Take advantage of that. But don't be frustrated by it. I know, sometimes we've people, like, well, you don't remember me, but you really have to understand that they will have those moments of clarity.
And you were asking a question about just those moments of clarity, and is it progressive? What I see a lot is some false hope, I call it. If somebody has dementia and there is a moment of clarity, and a family member will say, see, she's getting better, or this is, and I just want to caution about that. that the way to look at it is, oh my gosh, great, mom is having a moment of clarity. Let me be with her in this moment and take advantage of this moment. Try not to get into the future, thinking too much about the future, but take that moment for what it is.
Remember that they have difficulty learning and retaining the new, right? That's the frontal, the temporal lobes. So, but they remember the past, and I think someone mentioned that they will remember things that happened 30 years ago, but they won't remember what happened yesterday. And I think that's also an area of frustration, but that's where that's long-term memory is in there. And those memory books are great, doing all those kind of things are great. So just kind of don't get frustrated with the fact that they don't have that ability for that short-term learning. Remind yourself that people with dementia only have, they know that they only know what's happening like at this moment. They only know the present of this moment. They can't remember, what's happened a few minutes before, or maybe what may happen next. So, and the other thing is when we say enter their reality, live their truth. Sometimes people with, that are a little further along, they will think that it's 1942 or it's 1970. And there was a teachings a while ago is you try to bring them back to today. You don't want to do that. You let them live their reality. And you just go along with it, because when you try to bring them back, it frustrates them. They, think that no, whatever memory they are remembering, like let them live that, go along with it, and just have fun with it. I mean, that's really what it is, because we don't want to agitate or irritate.
So that being said, you might have to tell white lies. I get asked that a lot.
Mhm.
Like, should I be honest?
Right.
It really depends, and you have to be very careful with what you decide to disclose. So there is some newer research that says, if somebody's asking if their spouse has passed away, do you tell them or do you not tell them? It's a very touchy, you really have to know where that client's at. And I would say if you're not working with a therapist or somebody that can guide you, be mindful, because in some cases it might be okay to tell them if it'll bring them some kind of closure to that perseveration. In other cases, it will just make them upset, they'll forget, they'll ask again, and they'll keep getting upset about it. So it's not a black and white answer on some of those things, but in general, we're not reorienting people to the current time or to what is actually happening. If they believe that somebody came in and stole their purse today, and I were to be with them, and let's say I'm Mrs. Jones, and Mrs. Jones says, somebody stole my purse today. The last thing I'm gonna do is say, no, they didn't, it's right here. Because how's that gonna make them feel? Like they're crazy, not validate that they were having that thought. So instead, what I would do is say, you know what? Let's go walk around and find your purse. Okay, let's do that. That's terrible that somebody took your purse. You take them in another room and you redirect. What a beautiful picture of you. I've never seen that picture of you. So a lot more effective than trying to convince them that their purse was not stolen, because that will raise their agitation to here. So sometimes you will have to do things like give them a fake credit card, okay? Give them a fake set of keys, because those things will be triggers if they think they've lost them or somebody's taken them. So there are some tricks you will have to play, but it's to keep their mind at ease and to go into their world and say, what you're experiencing is okay. Don't be scared, I'm here with you, you're not crazy, you're just in a different environment right now. It's not about you. And that's a really hard lesson for people to learn, because a lot of people don't know that little piece that I was just saying, that you enter their world. And it's, I started my career off in peds, and it's very similar when you're working with somebody who has, let's say, autism. We're not judging what they think or believe. We're entering their world and saying, I know you're experiencing this. And that's a much more empathetic and calming way to address somebody than to try to convince them what you're experiencing is not happening at all. I'm in the real world, you're not. Does that make sense? So we're kind of going where they need to go to calm themselves.
So these are some barriers to communication. between you and as the caregiver and the person with dementia. So one of the biggest things is, just some tips of like, don't rush your speaking, because it's going to take them some time to process, and they're thinking about it, and they're trying to figure out what you're saying, and they're trying to figure you out. So try not to rush your speaking. Don't raise your voice, because they can feel like you're yelling at them. Also, in your speaking and trying to get them to do something, try not to be demanding or commanding, and try to, like what Danielle said, try to persuade them using, distracting and to try to get to do things. Try not to ask those memory questions like, oh, if someone walks in the room, oh, do you remember Danielle? Of course, that person's going to feel like, you don't want to get them agitated. So try not to ask those memory questions.
Going to, and I'll say,
Yes.
I'm even guilty
Yeah.
of it. Sometimes you just don't think.
Natural
and you
habit,
say,
right? It's just, it
How
happens.
old are you, Mom? Or,
Yeah,
or
right.
some questions that are, because what it does to them is it puts that focus back on, oh, I can't remember this. And a lot of people with dementia are aware when you say something like that there is a disconnect, that they can't remember that.
And they
it's
get
upsetting to them.
frustrated, even more
Yeah.
so. Yeah. So, and try to offer, not offer long explanations. Try to keep it kind of short and concise so that the processing is there. And we talked about this, reality of orientations versus live their truth. It's a really important thing to kind of keep going. And remember, not to argue. Try to deflect it, and not to argue with the person. So that. These are just some general, tips for a good approach. Remember that mood is contagious, and your attitude is everything. So they're trying to figure you out a lot of times. Even though you might be their daughter, they're still trying to figure you out. So always smile, be calm, be flexible, and just know that they're you're trying to work with them as best you can. Try not to be controlling, but be guiding. And know when to should say know when to ask for help, not when to ask for help. Little typo there. Know when to ask for help. So and sometimes you have to reset. Like if you're trying to get your loved one to do something, you might have to walk out of the room for a second, kind of regroup yourself, and then try another approach as you walk in. And maybe that 5 or 30 seconds, your loved one kind of reset themselves too. So it's good to kind of do that if you're trying to have them do something that you want them to do.
Gigi touched on something in terms of the processing time and how long it can take for somebody's response. So I was working with somebody yesterday, and his wife is amazing because she's just gotten used to the way that he responds to things and how long it takes. I actually timed him yesterday, and it was about 40 seconds, and he gave an appropriate response, but he took 40 seconds to answer my question. So what that means is it's not always that the comprehension in that moment is totally not there, or they're incapable. So hold out and see what comes up. Give it up to a minute. I know it feels forever, but I asked the man a very simple question, and 40 seconds later he said, yes, that was it, or he answered what I had asked appropriately. So just remember to take everything a little bit slower in terms of your talking and their response. And one other thing about how you use yourself physically, if I go up to a client, or if I go up to somebody with dementia and I'm standing like this and I'm talking down to them, how does this feel? Probably not great, right? So you really want to try to pull up a chair, come down onto their level, make eye contact, and get some level of comfort with them. Experiment with just gently touching, okay? Because if I try to shower somebody or help somebody do a daily task and they're like this, scared of me, are they going to come with me and do it? So there's a lot of warm up for each activity. So if in a half hour I'm going to help you to take a shower, I might have to sit like this for a while and increase how many times I'm touching and see what her response is, right? I might have to take my glasses off because things become scary all of a sudden, right? What's behind that? So you want to try to be as open and as calm and make eye contact and read their signs. What is triggering them? Am I too close? Maybe I need to go back here. Maybe this is a little more comfortable. But you'll feel it when somebody's at ease with you. And it's not until the person's at ease that you will get them to do the task that you're trying to help them with. You can't take an agitated person and say, we're going into the shower, right? It just won't work, okay?
Jumped ahead a little bit, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So Danielle was talking a bit about the nonverbal approaches. So these are the verbal approaches. So these are the nonverbal approaches. So, approach from the front. You stand and kneel. Use slow, steady motions. Use touch. So she kind of demonstrated that whole kind of sequence. Reduce, sometimes you don't realize that, there might be a fan going, like, we might, drown that out, but someone, they focus on that, and that's distracting to them. So, kind of see if you hear anything. Sometimes, they say, if someone's out there doing the leaves, right, that could be, they're focusing on that. So try to reduce any of those background noises. Demonstrate with gestures, and again, the nonverbal caring and smile, and what I talked about. Kind of walk away if you can't. If you're trying to let someone do something, you can't get them to do it that moment. Walk away and then just reset and start over again.
You might have to ask somebody, and you wouldn't ask. You would actually tell them, but in a way that doesn't sound controlling or bossy. Like if you wanted somebody to come into the bathroom and brush their teeth, for example, if the first time they say no and they're agitated, don't stand there and keep pushing the issue. Walk away, they will forget, you'll come back, and depending if they've shifted modes, they may come with you the second time. It may take 10 times. So I know there's some people here, I think, that work in facilities. You probably have to train your aides to go back. If Mr. Jones doesn't want a shower right now, you're gonna have to go on to somebody that maybe is receptive and then go back to Mr. Jones,
If that flexibility, I know it's hard. We're all pressed for time. We only have a certain, but just trying to incorporate that into the time that you have and trying to be as flexible as you can.
Yes, I mean, to be honest with you, there's some people you'll see that are very calm and kind, and then they may change as they get later in the stages. Usually it's somebody, and it might need to be med managed. We always try to strategies that don't, involve upping dosages or giving somebody medication, but there are some cases where that is the only thing that will take that agitation away. But number one rule is you don't want to make somebody feel like they're not validated or that they're crazy or that they're in their own world and not in reality, because those things will increase agitation and also fear. So even when we talk about sundowning, like later in the day, how some people get worse, even just seeing the sun literally go down and the outside change color can freak somebody out. So a lot of concepts that you and I understand, those concepts all of a sudden become very scary for somebody. I've seen people that don't want to get into a shower, not because they don't like to shower, but they forgot what the tub and shower is. So they're looking at it like this and not knowing how to get into it. So those are things that can raise agitation, fear, not being treated with empathy, people not being aware of what triggers might be. So even though you think it might be great to take Gigi to the dining hall today because it'd be good for her to socialize, if I take her into this group of people and she's at a point where this is very scary for her, is it going to be a good experience for her? So even though it sounds sad that she's going to go back to her room and eat, but I can sit with her and I can give her a really meaningful experience just with the two of us. So you got to shift your mindset about what you think is going to be offering quality of life to what is actually going to give them quality of life. And that's really hard to do because we're narcissistic, right? We consider ourselves in the equation. You kind of have to put yourself out of it and say, what is going to make this person feel good?
So we kind of touched on most of these things. These are some do's and don'ts. These are some do's. Do have your loved one tell their stories from their past and use the photos, and those memory books are so great. Do remember, what they think is funny. So, they might think a comedian's funny, or they might think a certain TV show is funny. So try to kind of go along with that and play their favorite music. And there was a discussion about music, and when we do a much bigger presentation, there is an example of a prima ballerina who is in her final stages of Alzheimer's, and she's sitting in a chair, and all of a sudden they played, what was it?
Swan Lake.
Swan Lake. And she like was amazing. Within seconds, she just started moving, and you could just see her imitating her ballerina, her moves while listening to this music. And so the music does bring people back, and having all that kind of stuff. So it's on the it's a YouTube on the internet. If you want to like see it, it's amazing how
She's actually doing the exact dance
yeah,
from a chair
yes.
to the music. So
And otherwise she was immobile, like she wouldn't, so it was really incredible. So music does bring people back. It does allow people to kind of get up and move and do that kind of stuff. So really, really important. Do remember to, have those books, those magazines, Bible, whatever it does, if that takes that person, takes their interest there and takes their, gets them to where they need to be. So remember to do that. Use those basic words. And what Danielle said, position yourself on their level. If you're trying to talk to somebody, go down to their level. Don't talk over them or at them. And so those are important. And these are some of the don'ts that we also talked about. Don't stand in front of them. Don't say, do you remember? Sometimes don't say goodbye. Sometimes they think that's too final. So, say, we'll see you later, or I have to go now, or something like that. We talked a little bit about the don't acknowledge someone if they have died. It depends. I think we're kind of on the fence. If that's really going to give them their closure, it's okay for them to be sad, right? You have to be sad. It's a natural course. But if you also think that it will bring them to a dark place, then maybe it's a good thing not to tell them. So that's kind of a.
usually if they bring it up, they're thinking about that
Yeah.
person. So you might want to take it a different direction and say, like, it sounds to me like you're thinking about Dad. Why don't we look through our photo book and look at some pictures of Dad? So you want to try to use it in a way that isn't talking about whether they're alive or not, but is just recognizing that that person's on their mind. And it might just satisfy them to see a couple pictures of them, and it might be a really nice way to reminisce with them. So maintaining quality of life ties in 100% with what you guys are doing. If in the early stages, in the mid stages, and even in the late stages, you have to find something that is engaging to that person. And it doesn't always have to be some huge activity. It could just be sitting with that person, holding their hand. It could be, like Gigi was mentioning, something that reminds them of like a Bible, or something that reminds them of, going to church every Sunday if they used to do that. So finding what is that's engaging in an activity. It doesn't always have to be big, because I have a lot of people say to me, well, he loved to play golf, or he loved to play tennis. He was very physically active, and now I don't know what to do because he's just sitting here, right? So we talk about, well, what are other things? Maybe just watching golf on a television set and talking about it and making it interactive is an activity. And maybe that sparks his memory of playing, and that makes him feel good. So it's kind of changing your mindset about, what it means to be engaged. And then we talk about the signs and end stage of dementia. But before we go on to that, I think somebody asked what the early signs were. Did we answer that for you? I think it was somebody over here. So you did. Okay. So some of the early signs would be forgetting names, which we all do, but these are some of the things that happen first. Covering up the fact that they're forgetting is a big one. So getting agitated. So you asked about agitation. I have somebody right now that in the back of my head, I'm going, this person has dementia, and sure enough, he was just diagnosed. So he is covering up because he knows that he's forgetting. So he will get agitated and say, no, I knew that where that was, and put it on something else and make excuses for forgetting things. Those are often the first signs that we see. Forgetting car keys, although, I've had dementia since I was 16.
Right.
But it's just when it starts to get in the way of function, it starts to become more apparent. Does it mean that person is definitely going to have a dementia that is progressive and ends up taking their life? Not necessarily. So sometimes it'll end at cognitive impairment. And if it's a true dementia related to either a vascular problem, or like a Lewy body, or the other dementias that we talked about, that is going to be progressive. And that's the sad part of the conversation, is that if it's true dementia, we're going to see a decline of that person. So we start to see in the end stages, people are less able to move around on their own. So it starts to manifest a little more physically in those later stages. People become much more of a fall risk. People they eventually lose the ability to speak, to make themselves understood. They need help with most, if not all, of their daily activities. So eating, any of their self-care tasks like bathing, oral care, those things become very difficult for them to do on their own, if at all. And then eating problems such as difficulty swallowing. So difficulty swallowing is a big one. When you start seeing somebody just really struggle with their food. So it's so important to know that the position that somebody is in when they eat is really important at this stage. So if they can be upright, as long as people can get up and sit in a chair for eating, they should. I know it's really comfortable to eat in a hospital bed, but sitting, halfway up like this is going to be very, very hard for them. So really working on, what they're able to do, working with what they're able to do and getting them in the best position possible.
And it's important, I think, with things like eating, you want to try to have them do things that are like every day. I mean, we don't eat in our bed, right? So if we can get that person just sitting up, even at the side of the bed and with the table there, like have them try to do what's, the more of the normalcy. And I think the middle stages are when you start noticing those everyday things are hard for that person, right? And that's so the first few stages, but then you're really noticing that something is not quite right. When they can't remember how to put their jacket on, or they can't remember those kind of everyday things. That's when you kind of think that there's a little bit more here than just normal aging.
And it goes beyond like forgetting somebody's name. Somebody now can forget that you're my mom. Mm-hmm. So it becomes really starting to forget larger concepts. In the beginning, you'll see more short term. Towards the end, you might just see more of a global memory issue. So end stage goals. How do we look at this and try to find the positive? What do we, end stage is the stage where usually people are dreading and they don't know what to do. We're looking at somebody at that point in terms of comfort, okay? So you're not rehabbing somebody in end stage dementia. You're not having them do a ton of exercises and trying to strengthen them. At this point, it's appropriate to start talking about end of life. And that should come much earlier than people think. So when we talk about end of life hospice, people think, oh, she's got a couple weeks to live. Even my mom will still say that. I'm like, Mom, haven't I taught you anything? Hospice is a program that starts really when people enter, or even before end stage, you're starting to plant the seed, because it can be a much more beautiful, quality-filled, comfortable way to live life at the end. So notice I'm not saying to die, I'm saying to live life at the end. And this is where you can be a little bit selfish, because I tell people, use this time for yourself as family members. You've got a certain amount of time left. What are the things that you want to provide for your loved one? I know I'm going to be sitting right beside my mom during this period and talking to her. So this can be a really special time. I've always felt, for whatever reason, that, people's end of life is just as beautiful and important as the beginning of their life, right? But we celebrate the beginning of their life so much more, and we're happy and we give gifts. But really, the end of the life is the end of a chapter and a closing of a book of somebody's story. So going back and talking about that person's story and giving their life value and meaning, to me, is a very, very beautiful thing. And I know it's hard to see it when you're struggling with somebody dying, but really that's what that time is for. Did you want to say anything about our hospice team? So our hospice team does service in the house. There are some people that want to do service in a facility or outside the house. There are some families that it might not work for, but there are some people that think, I would love it if nurses came here and mom or dad got the care here, and it all just came to us. And the family got support, not just mom. So that's what a hospice program is meant to do. It's supposed to be family-centered. It's no longer just about the client. It's about the family. And so what do their care needs look like? We want to make sure that somebody doesn't get bed sores because we're looking at comfort and pain-free. We want to make sure that if you're a nurse, you're looking at what is going to make somebody comfortable versus what is going to extend life. We're not looking to extend life. We're not looking to shorten life. We're looking to be right there where they are till their end, right? So the nursing changes. We're not force feeding anybody anymore, right? If they want to eat, they get to eat. If they don't want to eat, they don't have to eat. They can have ice cream. If they want a glass of whiskey, they're going to have a glass of whiskey because this is their time, right?
And we have a patient or a person that's part of our Parkinson's Center, and she's active and she comes to our outpatient, and all of a sudden she's decided she wants to be on hospice because of all that they have to offer and all that. And she is, not anywhere near the end, but she is realistic in the fact that there's so much there that the hospice can offer her. So she is, on our hospice program, but she's walking around, she's out and about and doing all that kind of stuff. So it is really a special program, and the statistics are that actually people live longer on hospice if you get on it at the right time, that you live longer on it. So
It's definitely more quality. Yep.
Who does that?
yeah, that's the hard part. I mean, that's where you have to get the social worker involved, and I mean, that's why we also encourage everyone to have their
POA, their proxy established.
early.
Because otherwise it doesn't
Yeah.
become a choice. So
Yeah.
at some point, if you're asking what happens if somebody really is starting to lose it and that's not in place, a doctor would have to deem them
Yeah.
incompetent, right? And then the POA would go to that person, or they'd have a proxy assigned to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much better to have those discussions. And
Really?
I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to be, I can't believe I'm going to tell them this. I'm going to be 50 next year. So my mom is, what, did you say? Did you say? Somebody has to say you can't believe it.
Wow, you're just a baby.
Please. I'm just kidding. I'm good with age. I'm okay with it. But I'm going to be 50 and my mom is 82. We started that discussion when she was 70 because my dad passed away like this at 68. So, and luckily he was a doctor and he was a worrywart. So he had everything spelled out, and we didn't know this, but he had everything laid out. So he did a wonderful thing for my mom, but that's not the situation for a lot of people. A lot of times what happens is you lose someone, you're not knowing when. And when I say lose someone, I don't mean just die like that. I mean, lose their mind. You're losing somebody. So it's better to do that before these situations. It's better to have the moving discussion, or are we moving? Are we staying home? Are we modifying the house? What is our long-term care plan? And people hate talking about it. But as a child, I said to my mom, I want you to have what you want, because what I thought she wanted, she does not want to live with me. I thought she'd want to live with me. She has no desire to live with me. If she sees Meadow Ridge, she will want to move to Meadow Ridge tomorrow so that she can play bridge and she can see a beautiful environment. That is her dream. So we make a lot of assumptions about our parents, but the only way we can know is if we open that conversation and we have a really good conversation about it when people are still sound of mind.
And I had a patient years ago, a client in an assisted living, beautiful assisted living. The family felt like this is where beautiful assisted living. She would not get out of her room because she grew up in Europe, and she wanted her house. And she did not want to live in a hotel. That wasn't how she grew up, living in a hotel. And this was like living in a hotel. So they thought they were doing a great thing, getting her into this beautiful place, and she wanted to just go back to her house. And she, so we set her up with services in her home, and she succeeded there where, she did. The living in the hotel was not her thing. So your mom would have loved living in a hotel. This particular person wanted nothing to do with it.
So that's why it's important to have the discussion beforehand, and try not to make assumptions about what people want. Find out from them what they want and what's important to them. once and find out there's something called 5 wishes you can access online. Even things like what type of care do they want? What is important to them? Do they still want to be dressed to the nines, or are they okay wearing a Johnny coat? It sounds really persnickety and detail-oriented, but that is going to be so important at the end stages. I'm definitely going to want lip gloss on till the last day. That is important to me. I don't have it on right now, and I'm dry.
I'll be in
So
sweats.
to me, and
yeah.
you'll be in sweats,
Yes,
right?
that's
And I do want to probably have one last glass of wine or something, you know. But those
Absolutely.
are the moments that really are meaningful to people in the end. And you will remember those moments as a family member, that person had that. They had exactly what they wanted at the last moments. That's not a bad idea. We don't have somebody that does it right now, but we have somebody that's going to be starting a dementia caregiving group, like for caregivers to come and like a support group. Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
We do have a dementia care.
I can,
No, doesn't.
with the 5 wishes?
Oh, not with the 5 wishes. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
so I can certainly have her use those during it, because they're easy to fill out and they'll take you through everything. But if you would need help doing it, a social worker can help you, or you can come to like a support group and ask one of the people running the group, because they're either dementia trained or OT, PT. One of the fears I get with caregiver support groups, because I've asked a couple people, would you come? And they said, sure, because it's you guys and I love you guys, but I'm a little hesitant. And I say, why are you hesitant? It's depressing. Or I don't want to talk more about dementia. Or one person always takes over and asks all the questions or runs the show. Or everybody makes it about themselves. All of a sudden it becomes about that one person's drama dealing with mom and her dementia. So, and those are all really valid. So having like a structured focus, like how to open conversations that are healthy, productive, and actually, you know, take us forward would be the way to go. So that's a great idea. What you can do is at the end of the conversation, you could do a wrap-up question that assesses how much of the conversation they're retaining. So if you're suspecting that somebody is not going to retain and you're worried about it because maybe you're giving really important information, you can ask if they can repeat it. You can ask if they have a POA that they're comfortable being online as well. And I would still include them, or somebody that they would like to be on the line for the discussion. I don't know what you do, but you can offer to talk to a family member about setting up like a Zoom or something where at least they can see you. But probably I would do that. The simplest answer I can give is always assess how much they're taking in, and if you feel like they're not taking in, either repeat it and have them write it down, or offer to give the same information and ask if they'd like somebody present, like a son or daughter. And you don't have to say from memory. You could say, is there just somebody you'd like involved in this conversation? Is there somebody you would like involved in this conversation, just so that you have another set of ears when we're talking? So you can slow a progression, right? So I think somebody, when I was having lunch, there was a woman right here that I noticed, because she dressed nice, bright and cheery on a rainy day. And she was saying, the reason I'm here is I want to know more about how to prevent it. So you can slow a progression, and there are lifestyle factors that make you more likely to go on to have dementia. Alcohol use is one of them. Diet is one of them. Environmental factors. Okay. So if somebody's already having a progression and you want to slow it down, or you want to keep them safe, you can try to address some strengthening and exercise in the earlier stages or mid stages. My point about the end stage is that you're not looking to rehabilitate. Then you switch to a comfort, pain-free approach. So yes, absolutely still have them exercise and walk, but most importantly, engage them in activity. So instead of doing something rote, like having them use an arm bike, find an activity that they like to do. So, you know, and that they're familiar with. So I've had people help me fold the laundry, you know, and this is an arm exercise, and it's standing and it's balance because it's endurance. I've had them stand up and do it. So it's something familiar. They feel like they're helping do the housework in their home, right? And it's fulfilling to them, but it is also structured to work a little bit on their balance and strength.
And as physical therapists, that's a big challenge for us, because we, you know, get it all the time. Mom needs therapy because of but there is a point where, you know, we can teach and they have an ability to relearn. But unfortunately, there's a point where if the progression, therapy is not going to
They're not going to be able to make what we call therapeutic gains.
therapeutic gains.
So at that point, they might be discharged off a service, but if you're at a place where you can hire an aide at home, or if they're still going out of the house and they can go to like a wellness program, I would still have people involved in that. And that's also where, you know, knowing when you need help as a caregiver comes into play. When is the point at which you are burnt out? Or that you physically, you know, if you're 90, are you going to help somebody that's 97 who has dementia? At what point do you reach out for help? And that might include getting, you know, help in the house. And sometimes those people, not sometimes, they're always responsible for trying to engage in activity. I have a couple right now. He is 95, she is 97. She's 95, he's 97. She was still driving at 95. The kids finally said to them, it's become an unsafe situation and I cannot help support this anymore. My recommendation to you as somebody that loves you is that I would like to see help, even though you might not need it. It would make me feel better. So they put it on themselves a little bit. So it's about, I'll have peace of mind. I'll be able to go to work not worrying. I'll be able to not have to run up here or down here when something happens. That's one way to do it. There's some people that are going to flat out refuse. And what ends up happening is that if somebody repeatedly falls or somebody becomes, deemed incompetent and unsafe, then other people get involved, and they won't want to go to that point. So usually when it's, or some people will threaten a facility, although with my mom, she would love that. She'd be like, let's go, Better Ridge, here I come. But you can say, Mom, if you want to stay home, this is what you need to accept. Otherwise, we've got to talk about an alternative.